Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're setting the stage for an absolutely epic journey today. We're going to trace the grand sweeping history of the biggest sporting event on the planet, the FIFA World Cup. But we aren't just looking at the global triumphs and the legendary goals. No, we're actually going to frame this massive global story around a deeply fascinating localized mystery that has honestly puzzled sports fans for decades. It's a real what could have been kind of story, and to truly understand it, we need to take a good look at the entire landscape of football history.
Okay, let's dive into this. The year was 1950. The World Cup was happening, and India actually had a ticket to the big dance. But they never stepped onto the pitch. Now, for generations, this enduring myth has circulated that the Indian national team withdrew simply because FIFA banned them from playing barefoot. I mean, it's a romantic, almost rebellious image, isn't it? But is it actually the truth? Well, we're going to leave that question hanging in the air for just a bit, because to uncover the real answer, we first have to understand exactly what India missed out on by tracing the origins of the tournament itself. Section 1. The birth of the World Cup and the shadow of war. Let's see how this whole history builds. Back in 1930, the inaugural FIFA World Cup kicked off in Uruguay, and it sparked a brand new era of international competition. By 1934, the second edition proved this global tournament was gaining massive traction. Nations were really starting to see the immense prestige in claiming to be the undisputed best in the world. But then, as we hit the 1940s, the momentum abruptly stops. The devastating, catastrophic effects of the Second World War brought global football and, frankly, much of the world to a complete and total halt. The momentum of those early foundational tournaments was entirely suspended. Moving on to Section 2, the Maracanazo tragedy and the rise of Pelé. As the world slowly recovered from the ashes of war, football eventually returned. But this return brought with it some of the most intense emotional highs and devastating lows the sport has ever seen. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer emotional weight of the Maracanazo. The year's 1950, the very same year India mysteriously sat out, Brazil is hosting the tournament, and they're fully expecting a glorious coronation on home soil in the colossal Maracanã Stadium, right in front of nearly 200,000 fans. But instead, they face an unexpected, absolutely devastating loss to Uruguay. It wasn't just a lost game, it was a national tragedy, a cultural trauma that left a profound, lasting emotional scar on Brazilian football history. It showed just how deeply this tournament could affect the very soul of a nation. But, from the ashes of that heartbreak came unmatched brilliance. Following the trauma of the Maracanazo, a 17-year-old teenager emerged to breathe new life, unparalleled magic, and just pure joy back into the beautiful game. The rise of Pelé fundamentally changed football forever. He was dynamic, he was creative, and he brought a flair that the world had never quite seen before. Pelé essentially signaled that football had found its true home, elevating the World Cup from a mere sporting event into a breathtaking showcase of global art. This brings us to a massive visual and symbolic reset for the tournament, 1974. Take a mental snapshot of this year, because this is when the World Cup visually became the tournament we recognize today. It marked the introduction of the shiny new FIFA World Cup trophy, the very same iconic golden globe gripped by two figures that players still dream of lifting right now. It was a completely new era with a new ultimate prize. Section 3. From Maradona's magic to Zidane's drama. With a new trophy came a new breed of player. We're now entering an era dominated by larger-than-life individual superstars who didn't just participate in the tournament, they completely defined entire generations of it. Enter Diego Maradona. In the 1986 tournament, he cemented his legacy with two moments in a single match against England that simply defied belief. First, the infamous Hand of God, a highly controversial, unpenalized handball goal that infuriated opponents but became an eternal, legendary piece of World Cup lore. And then, literally mere minutes later, he scores what is widely considered the goal of the century, just dribbling past half the opposing team. It perfectly encapsulates the chaos, the controversy, and the untouchable genius of this era. Following Maradona, we transition into the era of Zinedine Zidane. And wow, it was like a Shakespearean play unfolding on a football pitch. Zidane offered unmatched midfield magic and sheer brilliance, orchestrating the game like a maestro. He brought France ultimate glory. Yet his story is inextricably linked to intense controversy and deep personal tragedy on the world stage, culminating in his shocking, infamous headbutt and exit in the 2006 final.
It was a captivating mix of light and dark that kept the entire globe glued to their screens. Section 4, the modern era and global triumphs. The tournament's identity was shifting rapidly now. In 2002, the game expands faster than ever, breaking new geographic ground by arriving in Asia for the first time, co-hosted by Japan and South Korea. This really proved the sport's truly global dominance. By 2010, we witnessed the dawn of Spain's golden era, a period defined by mesmerizing, suffocating tactical brilliance and passing mastery known as tiki-taka. And then, 2014. Germany delivers an unprecedented goal fest, ruthlessly dismantling the hosts Brazil 7-1 in a match that echoed the shock of the Maracanazo all those decades ago. The modern era is fast, it's highly tactical, and it remains entirely unpredictable. Section 5, the real story of Indian football 1950 revealed. So the crucial point is, look at all that rich, dramatic, world-shifting history we just walked through. The tragedies, the superstars, the global expansion. All of that is exactly what Indian football was completely absent from. And this brings us right back to our opening mystery. Why wasn't India a part of this global phenomenon starting in 1950? Well, it's time to reveal the stark reality. The myth of the barefoot ban is exactly that. It's a myth. While it is true Indian players had historically played barefoot and FIFA did actually issue a rule requiring boots, that wasn't the actual barrier keeping them from South America. The reality is far more heartbreaking. The true reasons lie in a history of negligence, deprivation, and internal mismanagement by the All India Football Federation, or AIFF. At the time, the federation simply didn't view the FIFA World Cup as a priority compared to the Olympics. Actually, scratch that. It was worse. They failed to organize travel, they failed to secure the necessary funding, and they ultimately failed the players. It was a catastrophic administrative blunder that literally cost India its seat at the most important table in global sports. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. We've seen the booming, astronomical rise of the World Cup, the magic, the trophies, the modern tactical masterclasses. And we've seen the tragic contrast of India's historical stagnation, rooted in that massively missed opportunity of 1950. The barefoot myth conveniently covered up a much harsher truth of administrative neglect. So, after decades of watching from the sidelines as the rest of the world played for glory, what does the future truly hold for Indian football? Can they finally overcome this deep history of deprivation and step onto the pitch they abandoned over 70 years ago? That is a question I highly encourage you to keep exploring. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.